3, 2, 1. What's up, guys? Welcome to the Mad Chatter podcast. We got a very special guest, the guest that has been talked about on several episodes, and his name is John Jingles. John, thank you for coming on.
Good to be here, Timer.
He's been working as an addiction counselor for 11 years, and he's a counselor with the Bossier Parish Drug Court. And he's got his own private practice now. So, if you're going through something, this might be the guy you need to talk to. Let the podcast tell for yourself. Now you got to do good, John.
Yeah, the pressure is on.
Yeah, the pressure is on. So, John, it's good to see you, man.
Good to see you as always, Timer.
You gotta get the nerves out a little bit. It's understandable.
Yep.
Now that the camera's on. Right. I think talking about habit changes and stuff like that.
Okay.
You said do you, for your private practice, do you primarily do addiction stuff?
Most of my experience is with addiction, but I do just a wide array of issues. Just the run-of-the-mill stuff, depression, anxiety, etc.
So let's go back to you told me earlier that you really didn't want to do addiction in the beginning.
Yeah, when I was in grad school, the one population I was not interested in working with was addiction. And the reason for that is I totally misunderstood addiction. My understanding of addiction was pretty much what the general public's understanding is. And I thought counseling addicts would be, the equivalent of counseling diabetics and trying to keep them from going back to the dessert table.
Yeah.
That's bad for you. That'll kill you.
Yeah.
You should really stop.
Yeah.
However, I was working a full-time day job at the time, and the only place I could do my internship in the evening, most places you can do your internships in the evening are addiction facilities. And had another student who was doing her internship at the Bossier Drug Court, and she called me and she said, "John, this is where you need to be." And I said, "Okay." And I went and I began, and I felt so out of my depth. Not only as a beginning counselor, you feel naive, and because you've in grad school you've taken tests, studied for tests, did presentations and things like that, but you've never really been out there in the real world counseling, and so there's that nervousness. And then on top of it, these were addicts.
Yeah.
These are like streetwise people that could see right through you.
Yeah, they cut the bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. And I was intimidated. But in fact, it's kind of a funny story. When I first started doing groups, I was doing group with there was another counselor I was co-leading. Well, she was primarily leading the group. I was co-leading it with her. And I was so intimidated, or I guess, scared, that we would go through the group, and the other counselor would practically lead the entire group, and I rarely said anything. But on the inside, I'm thinking, I've got to jump out there and participate. I've got to ask a question. I've got to do something. And sometimes I would think of a good question to ask, but I'd be too afraid to ask it.
Yeah.
And then the other counselor would ask the same question. I thought I should have answered that question. But that went on for a few weeks, and then she said, "I tell you what, next week, why don't you lead group, and I'll sit back and just kind of follow your lead." And that was the push I needed. And so I resorted to doing one of the things that I have a little bit of a knack for, and that is doing presentations. So I was going to do a presentation on addiction, and so I just dove into addiction and started researching it and trying to come up with a presentation. And it went over really well. But that was the beginning. And then the more I started learning about addiction, the deeper I got into it, the more I realized addiction is not what I thought it was. Addiction is about everything that I was actually interested in doing. Addiction is, any behavior that people repeatedly engage in to get relief, relief from some sort of suffering. That suffering was what I was most interested in working with.
Oh, the suffering?
The root of addiction, the hurts, the suffering, the trauma that is always behind addictions.
So when you said that you didn't want to do addiction in the beginning, but then you had this opportunity to, you're saying that what was the what made you decide to go to school to do this? Or I guess that's a separate question, but what was it that you wanted? Who were like your target demographic for people you wanted to treat? Or did you have one?
Yeah, there actually was a target demographic. It was
Weird
actually older people, elderly people.
Really?
I was interested in more geriatric counseling, and I know that sounds kind of funny.
What is geriatric?
Old age.
Old age. Okay.
People in the later stage of life. And the reason for that, now I did not have in mind counseling people who were, like in nursing homes. Well, I guess it could include nursing homes, but people who were at the end stage of life, because my interest at the time, one of my primary interests was existential issues. My thinking on this is totally different now, but at the time I was thinking, older people getting toward the end of their life are starting to question the meaning of their life, the purpose of life, well, just the whole problem of existence, I thought that group would be like really wanting help with finding meaning and purpose in life, and I don't see it that way now.
Yeah.
Certainly, people of adults of all ages are there, but at the time, that's where my thinking was. Had a really big interest in existentialism, and existentialism is a branch of philosophy that has to deal with loneliness. In the sense that now these are existential issues, so this isn't just like I'm feeling lonely, I need somebody tonight.
It's the grand loneliness.
This is the grand loneliness that you are ultimately alone, that you go through this life and you alone are experiencing your experiences. Have you ever thought about this?
Yes.
This existential aloneness that even we have people around us, but we're having to live our life. It's just.
I mean, for me, I feel more comfortable with that. I don't know. I used to have this desire that I needed to be around somebody, this insecurity. It really took the form of like romantic love that I was looking for. And it doesn't mean sometimes I don't feel lonely. But I know what the one thing that will make me feel lonely is watching a romantic comedy. So I'm like, that's just a trigger. And then I was like, loneliness is just a feeling, a temporary feeling, and then it goes away. But I mean, I have so many things I'm interested in. I guess I don't have a lot of idle time to feel lonely. But I do know what you're saying. I actually recently watched a TikTok where he was like, he was like, so you're aware, but you can't really prove anybody else is aware. And so he's like, for all you know, you could be the only aware person because you have nothing but your experience to go by.
Right. This is known as solipsism.
Solipsism? Yeah.
Where you think that your awareness is the only awareness, then that nobody else really has any awareness. They're just all part of. They're just all here for you.
You're the god, right?
Right.
They're NPCs.
Right.
But yeah, it's that would suck or not if you're God. I don't know, like different concepts, but I'm pretty much open to anything at this point.
Yeah.
It's taken a lot for me to, in my philosophy, come from a intellectual level, and I try to rationalize things, and then I have to take a step back and look at things on an emotional level too, not just for superficial, what I consider superficial, not like high level philosophy sort of things. Like you have emotions are a part of the human experience just as much as thoughts are, feelings. So I don't want to discount feelings in the whole equation.
Well, feelings and emotions are like a sixth sense that we have. They're absolutely essential to our existence.
The gut.
Yeah, our emotions tell us, for example, what to move closer to for nurturing and what's good for us. They also tell us what to stay away from or get away from, because this is not good for me. So emotions are like guides, and being really tuned into our emotions, tuned into our gut feelings, kind of guides us as to what we need to do. So they're actually, and they serve a survival instinct as well, or survival purpose, I should say.
I feel like mine's getting very fine tuned. I've always talked about like there is no you to want things and that sort of stuff, and I still don't know. I still don't know how to like put it into words, but my actions and my goals are aligned. Like a lot of people say, I want to do something or I want to quit doing something, which is talking about behavior changes, which is going to be the topic of the podcast. I don't know how I do it. I think it just, and I mean, this doesn't help anybody when I say this, but if it will happen, if it will happen, like because I don't try to force myself to do anything, not really. As for addiction and stuff, like I'm addicted to nicotine like a son of a bitch. I'll admit that. What I'm doing is affirming my addiction to it, which, you talk about AA, they say I'm an addict. I don't want to start my day with saying I'm an addict. I don't want to affirm something. I'm trying to change my behavior. And you change your behavior by changing your environment and changing your attitude and your perspective about yourself. At least that's what I think. You have a narrative that I do this thing when you could change your narrative. It's just a story you tell yourself in your head. I definitely feel like I got off track there. I tried to cover too many things, but
yeah. On second thought, I will take a pencil and paper.
You will? Okay,
yeah,
all right.
You're saying a lot of things.
I know, yeah.
I was trying to hold on to something, and then I'm listening to you, and then it just dropped off.
Yeah, I know. That's because I try to say too much. I try to speak like Alan Watts, that beautiful soul. He manages to hit like 8 different points and then loop them all back.
He's astonishing.
Shout out. Y'all got to check out Alan Watts' lectures. If you're into the philosophy stuff, this guy's changed lives.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely.
Oh, you got a pen? Awesome.
Yeah.
Fucking professional.
To get back to the question you originally asked me about the kind of population I wanted to work with, and I mentioned existentialism. Existential aloneness, not loneliness, but aloneness would be a better way.
Yeah.
That we are all essentially alone as we move through our life experience. I mean, nobody else experiences what we must experience in our life. Only us. But another part of existentialism is meaning. Because we don't know the meaning of life, and yet mankind has a need for meaning. We crave meaning, and so that's a problem. That's an existential problem. Death is an existential problem because we all know we're going to die, and that's a problem. It's a fact of existence. It's a problem. What do we do with that?
What do you do with that?
That's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, it is. What to do about dying?
A very interesting
How to
one.
solve it.
Yeah, that would be an interesting talk. And then the final one is freedom. You know, we are condemned to freedom, so to speak.
Yeah.
We have ultimate freedom to do whatever the hell we want, to live as we want. And I'm not talking about freedom as in political freedom. Freedom, you know,
Yeah.
we live in America.
Yeah.
It's America. You can do what I want. We have the ultimate freedom as people, as a human.
We have it like autonomy.
It's complete. To make of this whatever we want to make of it. I mean, and freedom can be a problem. Freedom can be very disconcerting. It's more comfortable if we know what we're supposed to do. And but anyway,
It's like the parent,
yeah.
be like, "This is what you got to do."
Yeah.
Keeps the children we get raised to. Oh, what are we supposed to do? That sort of thing, and then we break out of that mold and start doing our own thing.
Right. Because if
and
you think about it, we feel that way all the time. You know, is this normal? How should I supposed to be handling this? You know, is this what should I do in this situation? I mean, we're always kind of looking for, but ultimately, it's just us chickens down here.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Look,
I mean, it's just we got this rock, and even though there's almost 8 billion of us, it's just us,
mm-hmm.
and we have decided everything.
Yeah,
But no one really knows. But we want to know what's right and what's normal procedure, what's normal protocol, how should I behave? And I mean, when ultimately we have total freedom there. I mean, this is getting kind of deep, but anyway, there is a form of psychotherapy called existential psychotherapy
mm-hmm.
that primarily deals with these issues in counseling, because these issues present problems for people.
I can understand why.
And often they're deep down. They're even largely unconscious. Like, for example, the problem of death. Everybody is terrified of death. If we were to become fully aware that we're going to die, we would be basket cases. We wouldn't be able to operate with any kind of calmness. And so, in order for us to live our lives, reasonably calm, and
mm-hmm.
we have to repress our death, which means we deny it, we push it out of awareness. And if you ask somebody, "Hey, you're going to die one day," "Oh yeah, I know I'm going to die. We all die." They still have it repressed.
But I got to go to work.
Yeah.
If people are afraid to die because of they'll be judged after they die too. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I think a great analogy talking about we're all gonna die is what you don't see and what you don't think about most days. I'm speaking in generalizations here with people, but you have a sniper trained at you at all times, and at any moment the sniper may pull the trigger.
Yes.
And if you visualize it like that, everywhere you go, you're sleeping, just still there waiting to pull the trigger. That is literally your whole life.
Right.
And one day,
right,
the trigger's going to be pulled, and that's it.
Exactly.
And you got no idea.
Exactly.
Like, if somebody was following you around at gunpoint all day, that would be extremely stressful.
Yeah.
And
so we psychologically find ways of tuning out the guy with a gun.
Yeah. It's interesting because, I have my suspicions that there's, even more fear, than I'm aware of. You talk about the repressed side of being terrified about it. I'm scared and I'm not scared of dying. When I say I feel pretty comfortable with it, that feels genuine when I say that. I don't know how comfortable you can really get with it, like almost like, I don't want to say welcome it, but it's just part of the experience too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying like if someone put a gun to my face, I wouldn't be freaking out. Flight or fight would definitely take over.
Right.
I would be anxious, but I'm anxious now, and this has nothing to do, or not. I'm actually not that anxious right now, but I'm anxious lots of times just driving my car, and it's not even death anxiety. I think my biggest anxiety comes from trying to get ahead and be financially free, because that's what I've attributed meaning to life in right now,
Mm-hmm.
which is learning, growing, and breaking free of the rat race. So my most important goal and ambition right now pretty much is breaking free of the rat race.
So where does the anxiety come in?
Oh,
There.
for driving, I assume it has something to do with wrecking my car or killing somebody. I've thought about it way too much. You have no idea. So I recently had on this transgender woman, Amara, on the podcast. Really enjoyed having her on. Amara, if you're watching this, I can't tell you how much time I spend in my head. This goes back to those norms you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting a little side, but we'll come back. I wanted to say this: the norms, like we're all making it up as we go, and there's all these expectations and stuff. Like I was like, do I shake her hand? Do I dab her up? Do I give her a fist bump? Do I give her a hug? I'm like, I can't tell you how long I thought about how to greet. And that shit's insanity. But I was off track. I just wanted to say that. But yeah, the you told me about what was it? The terror management theory.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really interesting when I was looking into that too.
Yeah.
It's
Absolutely. It's been a while since I've. Was it Solomon Sheldrake or Sheldrake Solomon?
Nick will
Yeah.
throw it up on the screen. The name.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do the post
I
production.
had sent the link to you to one of his talks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was good.
He's done some really interesting experiments to expose people's death terror. But yeah, well, when we say that we're going to die, we're not really afraid of dying.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really believe, though, it's going to happen today. Not this afternoon, not this week. We've got plans.
Well, so when I say I feel pretty comfortable with it, what do you think? Like, do you think I mean, you have nothing but my anecdotal evidence of me just saying, I feel pretty comfortable. Like, so what you're saying is you think there's even way more?
Yes.
Like, just in the unconscious mind?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh. That would make sense.
Yeah, it's repressed. But, whenever you, and a lot of this is so much to be talked about here, but when you repress something, it always pops up somewhere else in your life. So if you repress death anxiety, it'll pop up elsewhere, and maybe in the form of intense anxiety in your life, and
because I was wondering, I was like, if I feel so much anxiety, like, why? Because I didn't used to.
Anxiety is fear.
I guess it's because I subscribe to the game. Is how I put it.
What do you mean?
Alan Watts talks about the game.
Oh,
Yeah.
Black and white.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Or well, actually,
Or the game of.
I really don't feel like I subscribe to that game anymore, which makes me crazy and to a lot of people. I don't believe in objective morality. I don't really look at things are good as bad anymore. There just is what it is. Like, I mean, I can use it to try to explain something, and it's getting to the point now where I'm almost having to have the conversation of nothing's good or bad every time someone tries to say there's something good or bad, and I'm like, well, I don't want to waste our time here. Like, so I can just subscribe to the ideas of good or bad. I think they're useful if you're trying to achieve something, but I mean, there is nothing but what is. So like, I can say I'm proud of myself for doing this podcast, but the truth is, it is. I don't know. It's weird now. I'm getting deeper, John.
Yeah.
I'm getting deeper into this stuff, man, and I'm gonna be a fucking yogi before too long. I've noticed something in myself. I've noticed even harder projections onto people like I watch and stuff. About this rich person I watch, somebody on a podcast, Graham Stephan, he does like a financial podcast, and he's got so much more money. Like, he's good. Like, he could literally just put it all in real estate or live off the dividends, no problem. And he's super frugal. And I'm like, why is he so cheap or whatever? Or like, why is he working so hard? Like, it's crazy that he's working so hard. So immediately that's a projection onto him, and that's when I realized, like he's just rationalizing things the same way I'm rationalizing things. Because why do I stress myself out about money when I've had more money than I've ever had in my life multiple times over? Like, because he said, I don't want to lose my edge, which is the exact same answer I have, because I don't want to lose my edge. So I'm subscribing to the idea that it matters, that life, it matters, which I'm not saying is a bad thing at all, but I mean, hell, I do it. I'm just saying that if you view it as a game, one to participate in, or to just, I don't know, I'm very invested in the game of life, so to speak. And for everybody listening, it's not a game like you play to win sort of thing. It's like dancing. The game is the point. There is no other point than to play it. It's not about winning or losing. So, yeah, so I guess that's probably where a lot of anxiety comes from too. But you could be totally right about the death anxiety, because there for a while when I was very nihilistic, I mean, I'm still nihilistic. Like, I couldn't get out of bed for a while. Like, I'd get out of bed at like 3 p.m. and stuff. Different work hours too. So, but yeah, I mean, it very well could just be repressed death anxiety that's just taking the forms of other things. It's unconscious for a reason.
Right.
So.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know if that answered your question at all.
You mentioned we were talking about emotions earlier, and I was talking about how important emotions are for our well-being, and when it comes to addiction, of course, people who become addicted want to numb their emotions, oftentimes, and because they have been hurt so many times that to have emotions is to feel the pain, and so they want to numb the pain. And of course, you can't selectively numb emotions. If you numb the negative emotions, you automatically numb the positive emotions as well. And so addicts become disconnected from themselves in that way. And of course, also another aspect of addiction is not wanting to be present in their own lives, because maybe it's from suffering of some kind, and they don't want to be, they kind of want to be distracted from reality. And, using drugs, alcohol, or any kind of addictive behavior is a way of distracting them from being present, and being present in their life. And so part of recovery, of course, is reconnection with the self.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm rambling here.
No, I'm listening. I like it. I'm thinking, because it's kind of like we could talk about things that, like, we've had so many conversations already. You know what I mean? We've already discussed so many things that almost like lead on to other things.
Right.
So it's like, when I'm thinking about the, addict, like how do we define addict? If we're going to talk about addiction, or, and also like what to do if you're addicted, or, how to change your habits, maybe, because maybe you're not addicted, where's the line? How do you draw it? That's why I was kind of framing this as habits, but we could also speak more onto addiction, because like, how do you change a habit? Because if you said a habit is addiction on steroids, or wait, a habit on steroids or an addict on drugs, or I'm fucking that all up, but whatever. Like let's define what addiction is.
Okay.
If we can.
Yeah. Addiction is any behavior that a person finds pleasure and relief in, and therefore they crave, and it brings about negative consequences, and they can't give it up despite those negative consequences. And it's not just substance abuse, not just drugs or alcohol, but like we mentioned earlier, it could be gambling, sex, eating, shopping, pornography.
The eating one throws me off, right? Because you could say we're addicted to eating and drinking because we need it to live.
Right. Right. Well, your question.
I remember, I don't know if I was hearing it from you or something I read or a TED Talk. It's like addiction is a drug hijacking your reward center of your brain.
Yes. Okay, so if you have a frog sitting on a rock and along comes a fly, the frog will whip out its tongue and grab the fly and ingest it.
Mm-hmm.
The frog is doing this instinctually. It does not have to be motivated to grab the fly. A frog does not have to be motivated to do what's necessary for the survival and the well-being of that frog. It's all instinctual. However, humans and mammals, and we're mammals, we have to be motivated to do things that are good for our survival and for our well-being. And so that's what dopamine is about. Now, most people think, or quite a lot of people think, that dopamine is about pleasure, and so you just want your dopamine hit. And dopamine is pleasurable. So whatever raises dopamine tells our brains that what we're doing is good for us.
Okay.
It's good for our survival. It's good for our well-being. And so I mentioned pleasure as one of the things we experience with dopamine, but that's not its primary function. The primary function of dopamine is incentive and motivation, expectation.
So would pleasure just be a byproduct?
Pleasure is if you find pleasure in it, you're more likely to repeat it.
Yeah.
Initially. So your brain, in the beginning, if you find something pleasurable and you want to return to that again and again, eventually your brain can kind of put that on automatic. Then it becomes habit.
Yeah.
To where you're just repeating the behavior. But the pleasure kind of is the hook that gets you to doing it. Dopamine is also is what makes us feel alive. It gives us a sense of vitality. So when we're experiencing dopamine, we feel great and we feel alive and we feel vivacious.
Mm-hmm.
Dopamine is what makes us go after things. So if there's something you want that is pleasurable, and of course, whatever is pleasurable to the brain tells the brain that this is good.
Keep doing it.
Yeah, eating is pleasurable.
Mm-hmm.
It's also good for survival. Sex is pleasurable. It's also good for survival. The things that we naturally do that we find pleasure in is good for our survival and well-being. And so we want to repeat these behaviors, and we want to go after whatever it is that raises dopamine and brings us pleasure. So, food, for example, raises dopamine by about 50%.
Mm-hmm.
And sex will raise dopamine by about 100%. And so, so you might from experience, kind of understand that one.
Yeah.
You know,
I think a lot of people will.
right.
I think some people got it backwards, though. They're like, oh, I'll take good food over sex.
Well, there's some other factors that come in, you know, other hormones. And
Yeah.
but anyway, alcohol, I think, if I'm not mistaken, alcohol, nicotine, about 100%.
About 100%. So
Yeah.
nicotine is as good as sex.
It can be as
That's about right.
as far as really wanting it, you know.
Damn.
Cocaine will raise dopamine levels by 300%.
300%.
Meth will raise dopamine levels by 1,200%.
Damn.
Yeah. So,
Do you know what heroin is? Because I heard heroin is like nicotine, like they're around the same
yeah,
levels.
and of course the stimulants raise it much higher.
Yeah.
Your amphetamines, ADHD drugs, the stimulants, they all raise dopamine much higher. I'm not sure how high heroin raises it, but all drugs of abuse raise dopamine levels. And so now the higher the dopamine goes, the more tunnel vision we get.
Yeah.
You know, so as dopamine goes up, we become more and more motivated to go after that.
Yeah.
And as a result, you know, we all have goals in our lives. You know, things going on.
Yeah.
You know, I got to be at my son's baseball game this evening or tomorrow night, and then I've got to, of course, I got to be at work early tomorrow. I've got things to do, and you know. Family get together and then career things, you know. So we've got things going on in our lives, and all of these are goals, and they all raise dopamine levels. You know, the more we're motivated to do it. And by the way, if you didn't have any dopamine, you'd be listless, depressed. For example, they've actually genetically knocked out dopamine receptors in mice, and then these mice will be very, very hungry, and they'll put food right in front of the mouth of the mouse, and he'll make no effort to eat it, even though he's starving to death, because there's no motivation, there's no dopamine, and so that's how important dopamine is to us. Now, so we have all these things going on in our lives, but the higher, like for example, meth raises dopamine levels so high that it's like it raises dopamine levels higher than all other goals going on in our lives put together.
Yeah.
Nothing else can compete.
So what you're saying is, say I had a podcast goal. And let's say it was enough motivation, like sex or whatever, nicotine. That's how motivated I am to do the podcast. Let's say it's 100% up dopamine levels. And so I start doing the podcast and everything's good. And then I start doing meth and I'm getting 1,200% dopamine levels. And now in comparison to my podcast level of dopamines, I could just fall off and start doing meth because I'm getting higher levels than the podcast will give me, and I got to put in less effort, and you know what I mean, the path of least resistance.
Right. And the meth is just, there's no comparison, you know, the reward you're going to get from the meth.
Meth, not even once.
Right.
I seen a billboard that said that. I was like, damn. It just said meth in big letters, not even once. I was like, damn, they're really getting their marketing down, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'll remember that for the rest of my life, the anti-drug marketing.
Yeah, yeah. And I know I've mentioned several things so far that we can really elaborate on. I talked about the pain and the suffering as, the hurt that's at the root of all addiction, and we could really get into that as well. But to continue with the dopamine, if you keep returning to the behavior over and over and over again, of course, meth raises dopamine levels so high, and of course this could be with any drug, that eventually, you mentioned hijacking survival drives earlier, and I guess getting back to that, that eventually your brain can get the message that this is what we're doing here is necessary for survival, because usually things that raise dopamine are necessary for survival: food, and sex, and water, and so eventually the brain can actually add meth to that list. I need food to survive. We need sex to survive. We're hardwired for that one because we think of sex as a very personal, private thing, but on the other hand, it's it's for the team as well.
Yeah, we got
Mother
keep the
Nature.
players up.
That's right. Nature is interested in keeping the species alive.
Yeah.
So we are hardwired for that. Our brains could get to the point where they're fooled into thinking that meth is necessary for survival, and then it feels like a need. I have to have it. Yeah, there's actually a change that happens in the brain over time. In the beginning, the drug use is impulsive. And there's actually a certain part of the brain that the dopamine originates from. It's called the ventral striatum. And there's the dorsal striatum, which is the top part of the striatum, is where the dopamine is originally coming from when the drug use is impulsive. That's like, hey, let's get high. Yeah, that sounds like fun. But then with repeated use, there's a shift that happens in that part of the brain to where it goes from impulsive to compulsive. And now you can't stop. Now you can actually be in a position where you hate meth, you don't like it, you don't want to use it, and yet you have to.
Yeah,
you're compelled to, and you can't stop. And that's, I think that's where the invisible line is, that the person crosses over into addiction. They were substance abusers, and then they are now addicts.
I'm definitely a substance abuser. I don't know, because it's my frame. If I wanted to quit this, I would. And maybe that's what you were talking about, though. Like, it could, my brain could already be hijacked. That could be exactly what's going on, and it's just a story I tell myself. But I mean, I could stop doing this if I wanted it bad enough. Like, I feel that. Like, I feel very strongly that I could, but clearly I just don't want it bad enough. So because I've quit it for long periods of time before.
And there are, I talk about that shift from impulsive to compulsive, but at the same time,
it's a changing.
Yes, there's
a changing line.
There's a continuum, spectrum of addiction. Everything from the very hardcore addiction to people who they're addicted, but they're still fully functional. And so,
did you ever watch that part of the podcast I sent you?
Which
not mine, but the one on the iced coffee hour.
I did. I need to go back and rewatch that.
What do you think of it?
I thought it was very interesting.
Yeah, I was very curious.
Yeah, I wanted to go back and rewatch it and give it some more thought before I got back with you on my thoughts on that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if that dude's full of shit or not. Like,
no, I think he's definitely. I mean, it's definitely a pretty deeply thought out.
Oh, I didn't mean really on that. To me, I mean, it stood up for me, like what he was saying. But I don't know. He's supposed to have like $100 million net worth or something. I don't know. Skepticism goes into everything.
Yeah.
So I'm like, somebody's making a bunch of big claims, trying to do stuff online. I've seen a lot of I've seen a lot of people lying about stuff, and but
he seemed
He's
like he was telling the truth.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
No,
I mean,
that's what I got too. That's what I got too.
I
Yeah.
mean, too many details and stories, and I mean,
It was good. It was
Yeah.
really good.
yeah.
There was a part 2 too. I think. Yeah. He did a whole nother podcast too where they got into it more.
They
I was
brought
like,
him
this is supposed to be a financial channel, but man,
They got into more of that particular topic.
yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Because it first started with money, and then it just kind of got sidetracked, and everybody loved it. And I'm like, dude,
Yeah.
it was so good.
I really, really love the quote that he quoted.
I got it right in here.
Yeah, it's.
Do you know it?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
you memorized
yeah. Oh
it.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of course you did.
Yeah.
I wish
it's
I
too
had
good
it.
to not. You know.
I know.
We question all of our beliefs, except for the ones we truly believe, and those we never even think to question.
Yeah.
That is so true.
That's some. Yep, that's right. That's like the truest words I can think of right now. Need to tell my parents those words. I'll just drop a bomb and leave. Hey, y'all are crazy as QAnon to me. Love y'all though. A little sidetrack, but it did inspire me to make a video, like a TikTok video or a YouTube short video, where I'm like, I'm what's wrong with America, and I just start making all these statements about why I'm what's wrong with America, and just like all these other shit that people believe and stuff. I don't know. I just think it'd be fun to do. I feel like people would resonate with it because they've gotten the same people talking to them about that sort of stuff, you know.
Yeah, we all have beliefs, and we have assumptions and biases that we have no idea that we have.
Yep.
And when we think we're right, when we're absolutely, utterly convinced that we're right. There's nothing wrong with thinking you're right.
Yeah.
I mean, most of us think we're right, and that's a great place to operate from. You know, as long as we're open to the possibility that we could be wrong.
That's it, right there.
You know, like one of my college professors used to say, I have a reluctant willingness to change my mind. You're gonna have to convince me. I'm reluctant to change my mind, but I can be convinced because I know that I might be wrong.
Yeah.
And you know what being wrong feels like?
Just like when you're right.
It feels exactly like right.
That's right. Took me a minute whenever you first told me that to get it, and I'm like, oh yeah. So I'm quick to admit I'm wrong now. In fact, you change your whole philosophy about being wrong of something you're defensive about to being like encouraged, like please.
Yeah, I think it's the beginning of wisdom.
Yeah.
You know, because you can't learn, you can't grow if you're not open. It's like the Zen story of the college professor who visits the Zen master in his cave in the Himalayas, and you know this professor's been he's been reading and studying about Zen, and he's well educated on it, and he wants to go meet an actual Zen Buddhist who is the Zen master.
Yeah.
And he when he's with the guy, the Zen master, the Zen master offers him tea, and the professor politely accepts, and so he has his cup, and the Zen master goes to pour the tea into the professor's cup, and when it's completely full, he just keeps pouring and pouring, and it starts overflowing, and the professor's like, wait, it's overflowing. And the Zen master said, like this cup, unless you empty your cup, you can't be receptive to what I have to tell you.
Yep. Just like the coat hanger thing. You gotta.
Yes.
Yep. I know exactly what you're talking about. Pretty sure they had that in like Karate Kid or something too. Like, I can't teach you if your cup's already full.
Right. Right. I don't know if they had that one in there.
I don't know.
But they had something along those lines.
Something in some movie somewhere. I know that. I'm pretty sure.
Because Daniel-san has his own ideas of what karate was about, and Miyagi would get frustrated with him, you know. And
the biases I have, and I went into this one podcast with Angelo talking about how, there was this girl, like intellectually, I'm like, I'm good, you know what I mean? But emotionally, I'm like feeling attachment. And I would try to intellectually convince myself that that's not the case by doing affirmations of I don't care. It's not a big deal. But I'll also catch myself going
There's
ahead.
a song by 10cc, and the lyrics are right along those lines.
Yeah. It's
I'm Not in Love. I don't know if you've heard it.
Not in Love. I
By
don't.
10cc. It's a fantastic song.
I might have to check it out.
It could be a
then.
generational thing, though.
It could be. I don't know. I may have heard it and just don't
Yeah.
recognize the name of it. There's a lot of
Yeah.
songs like that.
But the lyrics are going right along with what you're saying.
Well, that might be the song for me then.
Yeah, you should give it a listen.
Got to remind me after the podcast.
I will.
But yeah, just I'll catch myself being aggressive, like aggressively, like, hey, if I cut this off, I'm not saying this is what happened, but in my head, it's how it went. Like, hey, if I go ahead and get ahead of this and start saying all these things about not caring, then I'm insecure and I'm trying to defend myself is essentially what was happening. And so that's something I found that I didn't particularly like in myself, and said, wow, there's more to uncover and unpack here to look into. And then the other thing with the projecting about I don't want to lose my edge, and then all the way to my biases against trans people. It's like sitting down with Amara. I had all these conceptions and stuff like that of what I'm, thinking about, or like what it's like. And I feel like that definitely enlightened me a lot to a whole other situation. And even though like I'm not really judging or like putting anyone down for their beliefs and that sort of thing, like trans athlete, we talked a little bit about that at the end, and that's a hot topic right now.
Mm-hmm.
How I was like, what are your views on it? And she was telling me, well, I don't think it's as simple as everyone puts it. In most people's head, it's very simple. They're like, okay, even if they're accepting of trans people, right? They're like, but you were a biological male, which gives you advantage over women, like just biology. And, I'd be inclined to agree with that. But I don't know how the people in charge measure like what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, right? I really think that's more of a question of that, because I've looked further into it, because she also made me privy to information where there was a woman, a biological woman, trying to compete, and she had to take like testosterone blockers because she had very high levels of testosterone. So they wouldn't let her compete in the games if she wouldn't take these blockers. So I'm like, huh. So you're letting in a biological male and you're excluding a biological woman. Like, clearly there's some things that need to be discussed here and looked into. Or like, what is the measurement? Is it measurement of, hey, after this much testosterone levels, it doesn't matter. Like, if it's a biological male transitioning to women and she's got less testosterone than is the highest you're allowed to have, then you're in. That might be the thing. But it's also, people doing simple math. But, I'm open to it. To me now, it's not as cut and dry as it was. And, I appreciate the complexity of that. So,
yeah. I mean, it does make sense. I mean, muscular growth, and I would say strength would be relative to testosterone levels. I mean, that's why we're stronger than women.
yeah.
We have more testosterone. So it would make sense that their testosterone levels came down to where they were compatible with women, that their muscles would shrink
Yeah.
down to that. And but I don't know if there are any other factors involved. I haven't
Yeah,
really given that any thought, but there could be,
Yeah, I'm very ignorant. We're probably both very ignorant to this, but yeah, it was also the biases that I saw in myself. I'm like, why? I was like, I'm still experiencing insecurity in a way of biases, the things I haven't even thought out that are just coming out.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't like that either.
Well, the most important thing is that you are aware. It's all, I mean, just being aware that you have hidden biases and unquestioned beliefs and assumptions, being aware of it and being open to that. That's all you can ask. And I think that is a healthy way to be.
Yeah. So, you just can't be. There's the things you're aware of, or like, what is it? You got the known knowns, the unknown knowns,
Right.
and the unknown unknowns,
unknowns.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
But so I mean, let's take you were talking about addiction being you didn't use the word crutch, but you talked about getting high. So you have substance abuse and then you have addiction. So what is it, last year or maybe it was a couple of years ago. I don't know the time frame anymore, but I would compulsively take kratom. And that I'd never called it an addiction, but it felt more like an addiction now in hindsight. Now keep in mind, I still do take kratom, but it to me it's a different experience now. It's not like it was before.
Now before, when you were compulsively taking it, were you wanting to stop or quit or reduce the amount you were taking and could not?
I wanted to. But to me, trying to do it, like, because it would have felt like I would had to try to do it, it felt like too much energy. Like, there was a lot of resistance to it.
Yeah.
And, I mean, ultimately, I just quit without trying to quit. It was more like it was made up.
An interesting statistic. I don't have the exact statistic, but
Unacceptable.
You're right. In general, most people recover from addictions.
What was that?
Most people recover from addictions. I'm talking general population. And I've even seen research where like there are certain ages, like cocaine addiction by a certain age, most people have given it up. They were one time addicted to it and they recovered. So that's a really interesting statistic.
Well,
and this is despite the fact that most of them had not gone to treatment. And,
yeah.
that people, the addictive personality is an immature personality.
That checks out. That checks out from my own experience. It's because I just for more context was, I think we hadn't seen each other in a while. Like COVID was going on and stuff.
Right.
It was getting to the point where I was like crying driving on deliveries at work. Because that numbness, like it's one thing to just take it, but there's another time to be taking it in high doses all day, and I almost was afraid to stop because it was to the point where I would get physical withdrawals, and I'd be crying in my car randomly. Keep in mind, I'm good, I'm fine, and then all of a sudden the emotions come out because I'm like, I don't know if this is real. Like I couldn't trust how I felt.
This was off of kratom,
No, I was still on kratom at the time.
When you needed to take some more, like it was wearing off, and
No.
So you're on it and you're getting emotional.
Yeah, I was on it and getting emotional.
Okay.
But I can get emotional on any substance.
Okay.
Yeah, I've also said before, whenever I took Oxy, it didn't numb. I can't talk about the biological side of things and the pharmaceutical side of things, but I have felt terrible on Oxy before. And I felt terrible on kratom before.
Physically terrible? Or
emotionally
terrible?
Just, I think one of the worst times I ever felt was when I was on Oxy. And it wasn't because of the Oxy. It was just the news. It may have made it worse. I don't know. But it's supposed to numb. And for the most part, it does. But, I'm tearing up driving the car because I want to know what I'm feeling is a real emotion. You know what I mean? I'm like, am I even happy? Or have I just fooled myself through drugs to thinking I'm happy? And so I was like, I want to know. So then I quit for 4 months. Like, I think after that day or whatever, I looked at my next set of off days and was going to use that as a quote-unquote detox, which the first day sucked. But, I mean, it really, compared to other drugs, I mean, it was a walk in the park. But, I just made my mind up. It was just, all right, I'm done. And then, of course, I started backsliding about 4 months, took a vacation, was like, I'll take a little bit. You know how it is. You've heard the story 1,000 times.
Yeah.
And then I try to do bargaining. Like, all right, I'll take it these days. I'm just going through every single addict mentality. And, I mean, now I take it every day. I take the equivalent of my starter dose. And I don't feel the need to, like, overdo it.
Why do you take it then?
Energy. So low doses give you energy. High doses give you painkiller-like effects.
Right.
So I was always taking high doses.
Okay.
I don't know, but that's a good question. That's also why I brought it up. I used to start off with like 3.5 grams as a starter dose. Now I might not even take 3.5 grams in a day. I mean, and there will also be times where like I want to take it and like do something like a higher dose, because I do still like occasional, like to me a higher dose is 1 gram, which is funny because that's so lower than it was before. But it's all relative anyways to your effects.
And so you feel energy and motivation.
Yes.
From it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Almost
dopamine. That's
yeah.
dopamine.
It almost feels like a better version of Adderall for me, for my ADHD brain. It helps me focus.
Which is dopamine.
Yeah.
As well.
So, also, I was on Adderall I was on ADHD medication for half my life, up to now, like all through through third grade all the way to my junior year or my senior year. So, I mean, God only knows how much that changed my chemistry in my brain.
I was actually on Ritalin.
Yep, I was on Ritalin. Yep. So
yeah,
don't even know how that, but I find it interesting because, like, why am I taking kratom? Because I know I could stop taking it, and because I've done it, I've done it for a while, and there for a while, like, kratom wasn't helping me. Like, you could do it for two things. Like, I could take kratom and I could be productive, or I could take kratom and be destructive. And I've done both before, but now I take very low doses a few times a day, and I'm being very productive, and I feel fulfilled. And like I just stopped trying to quit it.
Yeah.
And when I stopped trying to quit it, I stopped taking as much, and I started taking it responsibly, which is really interesting because I would stay up all night playing video games and taking kratom. So then when I was like, I'm not taking kratom tonight, I'd still stay up all night playing video games. I was like, kratom is not the problem. It's the symptom. And I was like, and the truth is, it maybe just made it easier for me to stay up, to play those video games, because that's what I wanted to do, because I was stressed out. I don't know. Like I feel comfortable right now. I could put it down forever.
Yeah.
I mean, it might suck for a few days because my body's like, oh, where's that dopamine?
This sounds very similar to caffeine.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
people talk about caffeine exactly the way you're talking about kratom.
It's they are like the same species of plant. Funny enough. But yeah, I was just curious because it's changed for me, right? Like I went from doing something that was I was really abusing it to now taking it responsibly. And as far as all the research I'm concerned, as long as it's only dangerous if you drink with it, which I don't drink, and you take high doses of it every day. I'm not even close to the parameters of that. But if you do that if you take high doses every day for a very long period of time, it can be damaging on your liver. I associate that to alcohol use. But, I mean, I'm probably the equivalent of having like a beer or a beer or two a day, which I'm comfortable with the health consequences of that. So,
a beer or two a day?
Yeah. Well, like a glass of wine or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Research shows that that's actually a healthy thing.
Yeah. It's supposed to clean out your liver, right?
I don't know what the mechanism is, but research actually does show that people who drink the equivalent of a couple of beers a day live longer than people who are totally abstinent.
Because it makes them happier.
If 2 beers will make you happy.
Right.
And of course, more than that, starts having the reverse effect.
Oh, yeah.
It's interesting that talking about addiction and different substances, if you think about it, think of how many people in this country drink alcohol, and only about 15% are alcoholics.
Only 15%.
Yeah.
Huh.
And so you have people who binge drink on the weekends, and they're not alcoholics. They binge drink. Think of how many people are prescribed narcotic pain relievers across the country every day. A lot, from injuries to surgeries to dental work, and the overwhelming majority of people do not get addicted to opiates, to painkillers. But some do. I don't know what the percentage is, but some do. Think of how many people go to the casinos every day, and the overwhelming majority of them are not addicted to gambling, but some are.
Yeah.
And the same thing with eating. We all eat, but some of us are addicted to food. So you have to wonder how much the addiction is attributable to the object of the addiction, whether it be the alcohol, the pain pills, the dice, the cards, the food, and how much of it has to do with the person. Because you would think that, for example, if alcohol is addictive in and of itself, if this is an addictive substance and anybody who uses this is going to get addictive because alcohol is addictive, then why isn't everybody who drinks alcohol addicted to it? What is it about the few, the minority who become alcoholics? So I think that's where the hook is. And I know some people will think, well, it's because it's a genetic disease, but that is very debatable.
Yeah, I debate that.
Yeah, it's actually the conventional stance of medicine.
That it is a disease.
Yeah, and even researchers that it's a primary relapsing brain disease.
I still have your book, The Biology of Desire. I still haven't read it yet. It's tucked away right over there.
You still reading it?
No, I haven't started it yet. I need to. It's yeah, that's something I still do want to read. I just haven't read them much lately.
Yeah, just to say something else along those lines that kind of ties back to something I was talking about earlier. We were talking about dopamine. So what we are lacking on the inside, we can come to crave on the outside. So if we don't have enough of our own dopamine, we will crave something that will give us that dopamine.
Yeah.
So
to bring it to acceptable levels.
Right. So stress actually destroys dopamine receptors.
Really?
Yeah. And so we're not born. We're born with our brain only about 20 to 25% developed. 75 to 80% of our brain is undeveloped at the time of birth.
Until what, 25?
The very last part of the brain to develop happens around age 25, and that's the front part, the
best part. No,
yeah, the frontal cortex.
The free will, the self-control part.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so if if you're lacking in dopamine, for one, you may experience ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's a lack of dopamine to the prefrontal cortex. And stress can destroy dopamine receptors, and it can prevent the dopamine system in the brain from developing properly. And so if you have a child who is enduring stress, lots of stress in childhood, they may have less dopamine than a child who is not experiencing a whole lot of stress in childhood. And so the person who has less dopamine will actually crave, or they'll get more of a kick or a benefit from using a substance that raises dopamine levels.
So that's why it's like really bad to do drugs when you're a kid. Because
well, yeah, it's really bad, but that's where most addiction gets started. About
Childhood.
90% or so of all addicts started as children. And when I say children, I mean adolescence.
Yeah.
13, 14, 15, 16. That's still childhood. And the brain is still undeveloped, and so you're kind of in fact, the book that I loaned you, the Biology of Desire, his argument is that it's well, actually it's not his argument, but he touches on it, that addiction could be considered a developmental disorder. So if kids are stressed out in childhood, then their dopamine system may not develop properly, and so they're the ones who are going to get more of an impact when they use a drug. And there was an experiment done one time by Nora Volkow, who is the head of the National Institute of Drug Abuse. She's a brilliant lady, and her research into addiction has been just game-changing. But she took, in fact, I think she was the first one to discover, and she discovered it in obese people. People who were really obese had fewer dopamine receptors.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes back to these people were traumatized in childhood and stressed out. And so if we're stressed out in childhood, because we're not born with the ability to handle stress. Our stress regulation system is not fully developed when we're born. It's something that has to develop as we get older. And a child has to rely 100% on the parents or the caregivers to provide a relatively stress-free, nurturing environment in which to develop. Because our emotional environment that we grow up in is equally important as our physical environment, our physical safety and food, and so anyway, if there's a lot of stress in the house, or if your parents are stressed out, and that your stress regulation circuitry may not develop properly, and you'll have a lower stress tolerance than someone whose stress regulation system is working really well.
Yeah.
And they're more resilient. They can tolerate stress much better. So people who have been stressed out a lot have a lower stress tolerance. Their body may produce more cortisol, more stress hormones. So anyway, Nora Volkow takes these two groups of people, and one group had fewer dopamine receptors, and the other group had normal dopamine receptors. And she gave both of them a stimulant.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what drug she actually gave them. But the ones that had fewer dopamine receptors, which means they had lower dopamine levels, they really enjoyed the effect of the drug. They got a kick out of it. The ones who had normal dopamine levels were averse to it. They did not like the experience. And so fewer dopamine receptors, the more you like it. Now, if I were to offer you a bottle of water right now, which you already have one, but speaking of which, if you offer someone a bottle of water in this environment, and they accept it, if you were to sip your water right now, how pleasurable would that be?
Not very much right now.
Would it be mildly pleasurable? Just like, you obviously have a bottle here, so it would be mildly pleasurable to take a sip of water, right? Now, if you were, if you've been working outside, let's say it's August, and you've been working outside, and it's hot as Hades out there, and you came in, and I offered you, and you're parched, and I offered you that same bottle of water. How pleasurable will it be?
Well, it'd be great.
It would be wonderful. And yet it's the same bottle of water. So where is the pleasure?
It's the circumstances have changed. Just like the person is the circumstance in this.
The circumstances change, but what change has the circumstance brought about?
Craving.
Okay. You might be craving some water.
Yeah.
But
lacking. You're lacking of it.
And therefore, because you're lacking it, you find immense relief.
Yeah.
You're so thirsty that you get immense relief from drinking the water. The pleasure is in the relief.
Yeah. There's like nicotine a lot too.
Yeah, there's immense pleasure and relief. Let me back away from the mic here.
I might bite you.
Yeah, I didn't realize I was backing away.
No, I do that all the time.
Yeah. So now, there's obviously pleasure, a lot of pleasure and relief. Now take two people. One person has a lower stress tolerance, so they get stressed out very easily. The other person has normal stress resilience, and you offer both of them alcohol. And you let them drink until they start getting a good buzz going. Which one is experiencing the most pleasure?
The one with the lower stress tolerance.
Right.
It's interesting because that's how Kratom felt at the time. Relief. That's exactly how it felt. Like all the stress and everything is like whenever I took it, I would take a dose. Like I felt relief from that. And then it went from that to causing stress, And now, it doesn't really feel the same way, which I guess is why my use is different now. But it's always something I question because I'm like, could it be something grander and deeper, or could it just be something as simple as current stress? It doesn't have to be a deep childhood trauma.
No, it might be just as kind of innocent as caffeine.
Yeah. It's
people can't get started without their coffee, And
yeah. Well, I will say this. I've listened to people on YouTube like really addicted to Kratom, like really. So even when I was dosing every day on what I considered high doses, those are relatively small doses still. Some people would take so much more to get the same effects, and apparently those withdrawals are horrific.
So they build up a tolerance.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the thing too. I also switched strains. They have slightly different effects, but I really switch between two every few days or like every week, so I don't build a physical dependence on them.
Okay.
But yeah, it could be really bad. Like I don't want to undersell what Kratom is. It can be a real problem. I have not found a death associated with it though. Like you can't overdose on it. Like if you're mixing drugs, yes, you can die, but that's a lot of drugs. And as far as I'm concerned, more people have died from caffeine than Kratom. But it doesn't mean that, because you can overdose on caffeine. It's rare. It's really, really rare. Like, you're going to have to be taking caffeine tablets and stuff like that. But you can die from caffeine or from a stroke, I think it is, or a heart attack.
Yeah, I would think heart attack.
Heart attack, not a stroke.
That would get your heart going.
But yeah,
it's a stimulant,
Yeah, so And that's the thing with weed too. A lot of people, like I'm an avid supporter of legalizing marijuana, but I mean, come on, it's a drug. It's definitely a drug. It's don't like, oh, it's natural. I'm like, well, technically everything's natural because it comes from the world. So like, that's not a valid excuse. But hey, whatever you got to tell yourself, like, I still love you, and you're doing the best you can. Like I'm doing the best I can. But I hear a lot of rationalizations around pot.
Right.
But so, okay, so say you got a problem with a habit you're trying to change, or a behavior you don't particularly like. Like personally, me, I don't. Once I realized how much time I was spending on Facebook and other social media, and like how many hours a day. I mean, mine is pretty fucking low compared to most people's, but I don't care. It's relative to what am I comfortable spending that much time. I've noticed I was on Facebook for like an hour a day some days. And I'm like, that's way too much time to be spending on Facebook, in my opinion. Like 1 out of 24 hours spent to Facebook doesn't really provide that much long-term value, which is something I'm looking more for. Right. So let's say somebody's spending 3-4 hours a day on TikTok, and they just are compulsively consuming it, like, and they want to change that behavior, or it could be anything. We're not talking about like high-level banging heroin in the arm sort of behavior, but what would be an actionable step, do you think? Well, here I could give you what I think about it.
Okay.
So like I deleted Facebook, but then I still do get some value. So I brought it back on. Now, this is what really got me to stop doing it. And I think if anybody did what I'm about to say, what I did, they would come to an understanding of, holy shit, I'm compulsively getting on social media without thinking about it. So my problem was this. I would lose my mindfulness, and the next thing you know, I'm on Facebook, or I'm on TikTok, or and I'm like, how did I get here, right? And then another time is, oh, I was on TikTok for a few minutes, but really it's been 30 minutes. Because time changes when you're stuck in TikTok. It's a weird phenomenon I've experienced. And I'm like, I don't like that. I feel like little bits of my day are going away, and it's starting to sum up to bigger totals. And I want to be more mindful, and like I don't want to wake up and then be done with my day without being conscious. Like my attention being focused on everything else. I want to be mindful. I want to be here, present in my body instead of focused on something else. So that's something I'm trying to change. So what I did was have a social media folder on my phone, and I'll click on that, and every single one you can click on, I got Facebook right there. So after I deleted Facebook, I would just find Facebook in other ways. So at the very least, I want to change the habit of how I get to Facebook, because the path of least resistance. The more resistance, the more steps I have to take, the less likely I am to get on it, unless I really need to get on it. So I went ahead and removed Facebook out of my home screen social media folder, and now it's a few clicks away. And what I would do without thinking about it, I would not become mindful or conscious of the action until I went to go click on Facebook, because I'm automatic. I'll just go to it, and it will disappear. But it's not there. And I'm like, holy shit, I just did it again. I almost just mindlessly went to Facebook. So what I've done is set timers on all of my social media apps for like 5 or 10 minutes, except Snapchat. But I use that as text. So yeah, I got a system now. I'm like, all right, once that time's up, I get to spend 5 minutes on Instagram. And I don't really even get on Instagram. Like, I'm just looking for something like boredom. And I'm like, what am I going to do in these 3 minutes? I need a dopamine boost. I need a hit. I need a little hit real quick. Get me up for a second, So I don't like that. I don't want to be dependent on social media. I've seen the statistics. It fucking sucks. People's kids should not be on social media. This is about to get a bit more broad, but I'm concerned about the children that are on tablets all day and social media all day. Like, we are creating addicts, and like, we need some serious regulation, because it's going to be bad.
Yeah. Speaking of children, being on these tablets and computer and social media. Human connections create neural connections in the brain. It's interaction with other people, our caregivers, siblings, that actually create the neural connections for healthy development. And when kids are spending so much time on computers, tablets, those circuits are probably not developing properly because they're lacking the connection that they need, the stimulation, the proper stimulation that they need. So I agree with you.
So you're saying that
it's a very passive too.
do you think that these pathways form in the same way with social media connection?
No.
Or
Well, no, not the healthy pathways.
not the healthy pathways. So you're
Right.
saying that there will be new neural pathways developing through social media
Or the lack of
development.
proper ones. Like, for example, when it comes to self-regulation, the ability to regulate one's emotions and manage oneself actually is developed during interactions with our caregivers. So if you have a child who is experiencing something, maybe frustration or anger or whatever, and the parent is there for them, hey, I see you're frustrated. What are you frustrated? Oh, I get frustrated too. Yeah, it's just kind of like that empathy. When the child feels like some significant other person is feeling what I'm feeling, it actually stimulates the development of their self-regulation system. It helps them regulate their emotion. The adult is helping the child to regulate their emotion because the child can't do it for themselves. And so the parent is helping them regulate their emotions, kind of bringing them along until they grow up and they can do that themselves. And so if they're lacking that kind of connection, then that may not be happening properly. But also, human interaction between parent and child stimulates endorphin production, and endorphins are they're our own natural painkillers, but they also are responsible for attachment and love and connection and joy. Even the experience of joy and the experience of pleasure and the experience of reward and the experience of love and connection, that's all mediated by endorphins. Endorphins have a lot to do with that. And our natural endorphin system is developed in interaction, nurturing, reliably available, caring, relatively non-stressed caregivers and interactions develop our own a natural endorphin system. And so if you have a kid who's isolated and he's just on his tablet, those interactions are not happening. And so that activity is a very passive one.
Yeah.
Children are supposed to play actively, do things, kind of explore and have objects and everything. I mean, it's an active, interactive thing. But just to sit there and just receive and take in as you're watching, the circuitry that would get developed by interaction is not happening. It's just all passive,
Yeah. I can't help but seeing like you're training your brain to look at this device as a drug too. Like every time I pick this up, I get a hit. It's like a bong or something. You know what I mean? It just But what do you think? Like what would you do if you were experiencing that problem, where you kind of caught yourself like you're in my shoes, you're mindlessly doing something, or maybe there is something like that you do that you don't want to do. Because you could also equate it to something else. I remember a while ago we talked about you want to read more, right? Like we're talking about changing a habit. We're talking about either doing something or starting to do something. And to me, it's almost one and the same, because you're going to have to replace that time with something else.
One factor, and there, when you ask me this questions, so many things have gone through my mind, but there must be a willingness to put down whatever it is, and to do something else that's more productive, and so how badly do we want to give it up? How willing are we to give it up?
Yeah.
For me, mindfulness plays a huge role in that.
Yeah, I was thinking that's like the antidote.
Yes.
To mindlessness.
Exactly.
To mindlessly scrolling, or because I didn't realize it was as big as a problem until I moved it. Right, I moved it out of that folder, and then that's when I realized, without thought, I ended up there, and then I felt myself craving it, just like a drug. I was like, "Ooh, I want to know what's in there. Like, I want to know. I'm looking for the notifications." And I'm like, "Oh, wow." I was like,
expectation, anticipation, what's next? It's all dopamine.
Yeah, and I don't like that. And I'm like, "Holy shit." Like, and this is new. This hasn't been a constant thing, but like, it just shows you that Facebook's designed to be addictive.
Yes.
And so is TikTok. And I'm like, we have to do this stuff in moderation. Like, these are drugs, just like I'm getting the same feeling I would get from Kratom, but it's just an app, and I don't feel like I'm the exception to the rule. Like, I'm pretty sure this is the rule for social media.
Right.
But I mean, I guess, yeah, that's what I'd recommend is mindfulness. But I don't know how the hell do you practice mindfulness? You got to be mindful to be mindful.
And you can practice that.
Yeah.
Yes, meditation is the practice of being mindful.
But what if you're not mindful enough to remember to meditate? That's it's almost, to me, and I'm asking myself.
If you really want to work on it, if you're really willing to do it, it's not something you're going to forget about, for weeks on end. Oh, I meant to meditate, and it's been 3 weeks. And so, if you really want to do it, it's going to occur to you,
So it's back to my idea of like no free will. Like, you're just gonna do what you're gonna do. You have no control of whether or not something matters enough to you to change. And I don't know. That's got me thinking. Is that what that boils down to? I almost feel like I'm a contradiction. Like, I'll be like, hey, let's give some valuable advice to like how to change behaviors. And then at the same time, I'm like trying to reduce it down to there's nothing you can do. Because like there's nothing like, if you want it bad enough, you'll remember to do the things.
Right.
To do the thing, like, it's fucking ridiculous.
Right. I see where you're going with that.
I'm too far. I'm too woke. I'm too something, man. Let me tell you, I'm no help. I'm no help for people.
That's a deep topic.
I know.
But if it's a problem for you, if you have to recognize that it's a problem. So any advice would be for people who recognize this is a problem and I want to give it up. I want to stop doing this.
Yeah.
I want to get control of it.
Yeah.
So anybody who would find any value in this is somebody who is already motivated. The practice of meditation is the practice of being present and aware.
For me, it's trust. Okay, that's actually a great thing to talk about if we're talking about changing habits, is what the conversation me and Angelos have. Because I'm from the notion that you'll do the best you can, And like it's almost like a paradox. You got to be mindful to be mindful. But of course, this is what I was going to say before I say all this. All it takes is one time of being mindful, right? Where you noticed, now you're aware in this moment, right?
Right.
So what do you do with that? Like, I'm going to try to consciously not do this action. And
Right.
if you do that and you feel good about it that you caught it, that's dopamine, right? So that should be a reward in itself, that you're trying to change a behavior and you just did so successfully. So it is my belief that if you really want something and you practice mindfulness, because occasionally mindfulness will happen whether or not you're trying to have it happen, you just when you are mindful, you change your activity. And over time, you'll become more mindful. Like you said, it's strengthening the pathway, right, in the brain.
Yeah.
So would you say that's it? Because I kind of try to dismantle that, but that makes sense too, what I just said, I think.
Yeah. Each moment of awareness that you practice, and you can practice being aware in the moment, actually strengthens the prefrontal cortex. Because the prefrontal cortex, which has everything to do with addiction, and there'll be lots of fascinating things to say about that too. But our prefrontal cortex is the part of our brain that gets us to do the harder thing when the harder thing is going to bring a greater reward. And so it's the prefrontal cortex that allows us to delay gratification for that better thing.
God, mine's got to be huge because I haven't spent none of my Tesla money. I spent none of it. Do you think it's also like, sometimes I feel like I'm flexing the muscle of don't do it, but I feel like I've compartmentalized. Like,
So you do it in some areas, but not in other areas.
well, I might need a better definition of compartmentalizing. I might not even be using it right. Basically, to me, my stock money is not touchable. It is. That's why I say compartmentalize. It is in a area where I will not sell until this, and I can sell up to this, and so forth. Like, I have a plan for it.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, most days it's not like I don't have to, like, I'm not like, ooh, I want to spend this money all the time. To me, it's just like I don't even have that money.
Yeah. Right.
But
Right.
there are moments where, like, I have margin and I'm like, ooh, I could just pull out $1,000, but it's just essentially borrowing from it.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, it'd be really nice to get that. I'm like, no, you don't earn that much money, man. Let it grow. This is your opportunity. So those are the moments where I'm practicing mindfulness. Because if I was mindless, I would just do the initial urge, right? Is that right?
Well, you're practicing discipline, right?
Yeah. No, that's right. But I may have lost my point.
Being mindful is being aware, is being present in the present moment, and is being aware of what's happening in the present moment, both externally and internally, and being able to observe it and pay attention to it. And so if I am mindful of, you could be mindful of your emotions, of what you're feeling. Like, for example, somebody who has an anger problem, somebody says something to them and they just pop off. They just react because they are completely identifying with the anger, mindlessly so. And they're not aware of, they're not paying attention to themselves and looking at themselves and asking, why am I feeling this anger when they said what they said? Or is this anger that I'm feeling, is it appropriate to this situation? I'm feeling this anger, and yet at the same time, maybe this person, didn't mean what they said.
Yeah.
Maybe they, maybe that's a reflection on maybe they're stressed out. Maybe they're going through something. And so if I'm mindful, I can be aware of my anger and aware of the situation, and I can respond. But if I'm mindless, I'm just going to react. I'm just going to completely identify with the anger and go with it mindlessly. But people can emotionally compartmentalize too. They can. It's really amazing how people can divide their. It's almost like parts of their mind are like cordoned off in a different compartment.
Is compartmentalizing healthy or unhealthy?
I would say it could be both. Compartmentalizing, if you are a firefighter, an emergency responder, and here's a situation, if you can just set aside all your emotions about it, and you'll compartmentalize that and then do your job, that's a good thing. But if there's something going on with you that you don't want to deal with, that you don't want to face, some truth about yourself or your life that's really uncomfortable for you, and you don't want to look at it, you don't want to face it, so you kind of put it over in this compartment to where in your mind it's out of sight, out of mind. And it's amazing how we can do that, and just completely ignore things going on in us. There's something about boredom, when people get sucked into the social media or whatever. Boredom, if you think about it, boredom is a fundamental discomfort with yourself.
The
so we're
alone
bored,
time.
we don't want to be with ourselves. And we want, and you mentioned something along this line a while ago. When we're bored, we're completely with ourselves, and if we're uncomfortable, we want to be distracted from that, and so, so we may get on TikTok or social media, whatever. The question is, why am I so uncomfortable with myself? Being with myself.
I think boredom is really just an interesting, I've thought about it. I've heard some people talk about it like a phenomenon of the modern age. Because boredom would only appear if you have all your basic needs met for. So throughout history, there's only a very few people that had everything needed for them, where they're looking for external stimulation besides what it takes to survive.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense.
It's yeah, I don't know. I've tried to think about how to change habits for so long, and
there's a saying, and I know I've mentioned this to you before. Speaking of discipline, but I think it also relates to the social media problem, addiction. What can a person do? And and I think what you were talking about earlier is let me say two things. First is what I was going to say about discipline is discipline is choosing what you want most rather than what you want now.
I like that.
And so, the question, like with the social media and struggling with giving up that addiction, ask yourself the question, what is it I want to do now? What is it I want to do most? And then you have to be willing to choose what you want most. And then I lost the other point I wanted to make.
I do have something to say about what you just said there. I feel like for me, like whenever I was like down, depressed, and just sad and very nihilistic, no meaning to life and stuff, like that was a bad way. Like it's true to me. It's absolutely true, and I still find it true. Uh, but now I see it differently. I'm looking at it from a different angle, and from this angle, I feel much more free. Uh, but I found like I make my own meaning. I'm free to create and destroy meaning, just like the guy on that podcast said. He's like, being alive means to create and destroy meaning constantly. So it's what it's like. I'll use Angelo as an example. He's open about all of it. He's smoking pot, and he doesn't want to be smoking pot all the time. But what are you quitting for? You know what I mean? Like, for me, the kratom was a problem, and then I started just changing because I wanted to start this podcast. And even though I started only a couple of months ago, I've been planning on it for months too, working through stuff. So, like, yes, taking kratom like that would give me a sort of sick comfort. But now I'm not just giving something up for nothing. I'm giving something up for something I want more. So what I'm saying, if a lot of people are stuck on TikTok and they may not even care, and that's fine. That's not a put down because you want to spend 3 hours on TikTok. Like, I don't want to. But if you had a bigger goal, you might not even think you have a problem with it till you try to quit it. Okay? And so if you have a bigger goal you're trying to achieve and you need time to do that, then you'll find the problems there. But I think the way you overcome it is you have to have meaning, or not meaning, but you have to have a bigger goal. You have to have something greater.
Right.
Like, it's not a problem till it's getting in the way of something.
Right.
So, and I think a lot of people, I hope they find this bigger thing that, I try not to project too much, but I like to think we're all capable of great things and interesting things, and we can all have a better life than binging content all day. Just my opinion, though. Like, what is it? Like, go out. You got to go experience life, not just watch it happen. And I think a lot of people might find that, and then they're going to find they have trouble. Because, you go on Reddit, you can see a lot of people, like, they're addicted to video games, like, seriously addicted, and social media, too. And I'm like, you need a goal. That, like, if your goal is to quit something, you're also focusing on the thing that you're trying to quit. But a person that you're trying to be like wouldn't even think about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm like, you're focusing on the symptom. You're not focusing on, like, the root cause. Or, like, for me, I think it was meaning. I think it was fulfillment. Like, having a conversation with someone every week and growing something was what I needed. Mm-hmm. But I was so dissatisfied with that thought that I turned to drugs and escapism. And now, since I've started this, my life has flourished. I've been working out consistently again. I've been ramping up my workouts. The first year was about habit building. I mostly built the habit. I did it for a year. I averaged 28% of the days last year of exercising. Very light exercise. This year's about ramping up, getting cut, losing weight, and dieting. And now for over a month and a half, I've been meal prepping and saving money. And I've been budgeting for over a year and a half. Like, all these things have started to compound. But since I started the podcast, it's amazing changes have happened. Like, it's not about the money. It's not about, money would be great. I'd love to make money from this podcast, but, like, it's not about that. Like, it can't be about that. It has to be about the conversations and the personal growth. And that's what it's about for me. So when I'm at work, I'm not just like, what am I doing with my life? Like, there is no meaning. I can only get so much value out of delivering someone's food. And if everybody was super nice and like, thank you so much, that would be a little bit more fulfilling.
Right.
But half the people just shut the door on you, just like, give me that pizza. You know, so this gives me something to look forward to. It gives me something to grow. It makes me feel uncomfortable. And stagnation is the death of me. Stagnation leads to drugs. Stagnation leads to escapism. And we have an escapism culture.
Yes, we do.
You know, rant over with.
Yeah, so you're saying that success breeds success.
Yes.
It compounds. I like the word you use there. Absolutely.
Started feeling passionate. Getting passionate about it.
Yeah. You know, like you may have mentioned earlier, I don't remember, but I would think you also would want to identify what your triggers are. To, you know, when you're about to
that's so good.
Watch something or pull something up, you know, when do you tend to do it? Where do you tend to do it? And then kind of cut yourself off at the pass, you know, choose deliberately to do something else instead, so that you don't fall into that same routine, you know. Come home, plop down on the couch. When I plop down on the couch, pull out my phone, and then, you know, I won't plop down on the couch.
Yeah.
When I come home, I'm going to bypass the couch and I'm going to go, and so you're deliberately avoiding the conditions that support the habit. That may be useful to some degree.
I mean, you're explaining it to a T. The changes. I mean, it's blowing my mind right now, and I'm starting to have like other revelations about why I might be trying to look at social media, but I might have to write that in the journal later.
Okay.
That's exactly what happens. I'll like plop on the couch, start playing video games, and I guess I'll be in between missions or something. I'll like pull out my phone for a few minutes, and that's it. I'm just like, do I need the extra dopamine and stimulation, like, or am I thinking, like, between that there may be other things that I want to do more. You know what I mean? So I got to stay stimulated while I do this constantly.
and a lot of it is habit.
Yeah.
You know, we just fall into the habit. And, you know, if we can, like I said, if we could recognize in the moment that this is going to trigger me to pull out my phone, and we make a deliberate choice to do something else, to get us past that. Like you said, in between. When would you say you pulled out your phone? In between
missions.
Missions.
Call
Okay.
missions. Yeah.
Instead of doing that, determine that, you know, in between missions, I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna go to the kitchen. I'm gonna, you know, get a glass of water. I'm gonna go do something else, and then come back, and then you're helping to break that habit loop. You know,
I think
because doing it over and over and over is actually reinforcing the habit and making it even stronger.
I think I've hijacked my brain back, or I resumed control. Or no, I feel like I'm gaining control for the first time, even though I don't like the word control. Whereas me, instead of going home, like, and jumping on the couch, I'll do other things. Like last night, I came home and I worked on Photoshop for hours, trying to learn Photoshop, and then like different prices and all that. Like, so I worked like a 10-hour shift, and I came home and I did the stuff that I really want to do. Well, I mean, I really don't want to do Photoshop, but I want the results that Photoshops will get me. So that's what I really want to do.
Right.
And so I spent hours on that, and I'm tired. You know what I mean? And there's nights where I'll come home and I'll work. Like, I'll be working on the podcast stuff the whole time until it's bedtime, and then I'll just go to bed. And, like, those, like, yes, I get it. I'm not getting the usual enjoyment, but those days feel so much better. Like, it's bizarre. Like, I'm excited to exercise now. Like, all the things that I've been saying I want and been slowly implementing, taking baby steps, they're now, like, getting me jacked up. I'm like, hell yeah, let's do this. I feel so much better doing the shit that's giving my life meaning versus laying on the couch. And then, see, now I'm getting all worked up again because it's like life-changing shit. I've never experienced that. I've never had this level of conviction in anything. And, like, it's a new level of high that nothing else can give you. Nothing else can give you. I mean, I still do plop on that couch sometimes.
Yeah.
I do. But it happens less and less.
Yeah.
And if it's between, I'm more responsible. I'm like, if I want this, I got to do this. No one else is going to do it. So I could go lay on that couch right now, but I'm going to feel so much more like shit if I do that. And that's why I'm saying, like, I hijacked it back. Now everything else that I've been wanting to do, exercise, meal prep, still not there. I'm not super happy with meal prepping. But most of everything, I get more fulfillment and joy from it. So we're like, now that I've done that and I made a habit out of doing this, I know what the alternative is, and I don't like it. Like, if everything's done, that's guilt-free. That's awesome. I love it. But I don't, even on like Wednesdays are supposed to be my day to do whatever I want. I still don't want to just lay on the couch and play video games all day. My body will ache, and I won't feel satisfied. My brain will start decaying is what I call it. And I'm like, let me do a little bit of work. And I'm like, we work all the time, right? We have to have a job. You don't even realize when you're 18 that you're going to be working for most of the rest of your life. You know,
Right.
You never thought that last summer this is going to be the longest time I have off unless I get in a serious fucking accident.
Right.
And, you know, and now I'm looking at it, it's totally changed. Just because you're forced to work doesn't mean you shouldn't work, but your perspective and circumstances have changed. So, like, now working on this is fun for the most part. It's stressful, but it's better than the alternative.
Yeah.
So,
It's a good stress.
That's great stress.
Yeah. Satisfaction and fulfillment feel so much more enjoyable and pleasurable than the pleasure of being lost in a video or a video game.
The shallow pleasures.
That's just momentary. When the game's over, there goes the enjoyment. But fulfillment, contentment, that just stays with you. The slow burn, you know.
It's a little scary changing this much, I'll be honest. Like, even though I'm excited about all of this, it's like still kind of terrifying to. It's because your whole concept, or what I say, the illusion of self. You know, like, who am I? I'm very different than I was a week ago. Like every week you're just further and further. Like, so this story that you're the same person. Like, you're constantly evolving, and you can look back 5 years and you look nothing like who I am today. And, like, that's a little scary. You're like, holy shit, like, I can't stop changing even if I wanted to.
Right.
You know?
Right. That's right.
But
yeah, life and experience will change you.
I also kind of feel like that inner kid, you know, like, that voice is still in my head. Like, looking at everything. Like, I'm thinking of it from the lens of a child. Like, oh my God, look at this. I'm an adult now. Or something like all.
That will probably never leave you.
Yeah, and I
still even have that sometime.
It's like I remember, like, I would be sleeping with a girl or something. I was like, look at you, man.
Yep.
Look at you. Like, all of it, all the childhood thoughts are still there, you know.
Yep.
And I try to give my old childhood self a high five sometimes. You know, like, good for you, man.
That really never changes.
Yeah.
It never does. Even now, I have moments.
I hope it don't.
Where I feel like, wow, you know, I'm such an adult now, you know. I mean, every now and then that pops up, you know, because on the inside, we're that same person we were when we were a kid.
You know, I'm afraid that it does stop for a lot of people. I feel like it may have stopped for my parents, I'll be honest. When you close, when you start shutting doors and not opening up any new doors, it's an ugly thing. But, well, we got anything else you want to add?
There's so much more we could talk about.
You be on again? You gonna come back on the podcast?
Sure.
All right. Yeah. Well, I'll try to be a little bit better organized.
Yeah, and this time, you know,
I'll let you run the podcast. You'll be the host next time.
Yeah, we've touched on a number of things that could be rabbit holes to go down.
Mm-hmm. That's why you should start a YouTube channel. You should start a TikTok account and just state things. Literally just you record it on the phone just speaking about things and just post that shit as a video and put hashtag For You page. That's it. That's all you got to do. It's the easiest thing you could do.
For You page?
Yeah, it gets you to pop up in people's feeds.
The For You page hashtag.
Yeah, that's it. That's all. That's really all you need to put. You could put therapy, counselor. You could add other hashtags, but yeah, that's the main one.
And what is it? For You 2 or For You?
For You page,
For
like
You page.
FYP.
FYP.
Yeah. But yeah, you could reach a lot of people. I'll get like 500 views on a video, or like over 1,000 views, and like it's not even that great of a video. So I mean, you'd be surprised.
Wow.
You could reach a lot of people.
Do you monetize TikTok?
It's just terrible. It's terrible for monetization. But if your goal is to help people and give out information, it's a great tool. Just don't expect any money for it.
Yeah.
But John, thank you so much for coming on.
It's been fun. I kind of calmed down and
yeah. I mean, I definitely noticed. Unless I said the first 5 minutes, it gets better and stuff. But thank y'all for watching. Let us know what y'all think. Especially if you watch to the end, comment that you watched to the end and hit the like button, because I need love and support, or else I'll die inside. So thanks for watching, guys.
Was it really that good, Timer?
I think it was real good.